Today we're going to be discussing something that you and I actually were privately discussing yesterday, although when I spoke to Luke, the producer, he had to remind me that we did it off air rather than on air, because we were talking about it during a break. And this is the thought that the Premier League are moving a step closer to the Netflix of football. For many years, they have had a deal with the IMG. They've nicked your idea, they've nicked your idea because for many years they've been doing a deal with IMG, a huge production company, who produce a sustaining service for Premier League broadcasters around the world. So if you buy Premier League rights and you're not in this country, if you don't produce your own bespoke content, you can buy a sustaining service off the Premier League, and that content is dealt with by IMG, but they're taking all production in-house now.
Overseas, I mean, ultimately, it's a variety of things, isn't it? It's the production of any kind of off-field content that IMG were responsible for. They were the owner of Premier League Productions, weren't they?
Well, they're joint owners, aren't they?
I think, I thought it was a joint venture, but someone told me yesterday it's not. It's entirely owned by IMG. That will come out in a wash, won't it? The bottom line is that their predominant relationship with them was the production of content that involved live content for overseas deals, and ultimately content to wrap around when it's not live. It's probably an economic call at this moment in time, but it may well be, I think logic will prevail, that it's the first step towards the Premier League looking at its opportunity to become its own content provider, creator and deliverer. I've always maintained, not easy, it's challenging, but I've always maintained that if you own your own content, why would you not eventually alight upon the fact that you yourself can distribute this product, market this product and broadcast this product, and then own all aspects of it and really row your own boat, rather than potentially be at the beck and call and whim of the broadcasters and the telcos now, as broadcasters have become, and their economics.
Can you see a scenario where the Premier League own and distribute all their content globally and make it very affordable for everybody to be able to purchase what they want to watch?
Well, first of all, it is affordable for everybody else around the world to watch the content of Premier League football, because it's vastly different economics that are buying those media rights. Where it isn't affordable is in this country. And the irony of it is that you can watch Premier League football in North America for a fraction, or Australasia for a fraction of the price that you can watch it here for, because the broadcast deals that are being bought for overseas deals are a fraction of the cost of what the broadcasters are paying in this country. They're paying 1.7 billion, Sky, for the UK rights. They're visiting that on the consumer because of the cost implications of it, whereas if you're in North America and you're paying 300 million for a broadcast deal, whoever's carrying it, whichever NBC, I believe is the case, then ultimately the cost implications of it for the American consumer sitting in America watching Premier League football is far cheaper.
So can you conceive of a situation where, because, just explain the economics, because at the moment the model is sell rights to broadcasters, get lump sum up front.
Correct.
Could there be a model where they own everything themselves?
Of course.
A bit like there's an Apple deal that's done with the MLS, right?
Yes, where they 2.5 billion over 10 years.
Where they charge you 70 quid a year and you can watch every single game from the MLS. There's a load of games in the MLS.
The brilliant stuff of America, it's got scale. I mean, if you look at America,
but this deal will give you scale, right? So if you're selling to the globe rather than one individual territory, could you take in subscriptions yourself rather than sending it to broadcasters?
I said this 5 or 6 years ago about the principle of there being a Netflix of football, which drives down the cost implications of it from a membership point of view and a viewing point of view, which removes the biggest challenge to broadcasting right now, which is churn. The reasons why you've got churn, which is people morphing off the platforms like Sky and into the piracy marketplace. And piracy is funded by organised crime, so you really don't want that getting an opportunity to develop any further than it already has. It's unstoppable. You might nick a few people there every now and again for distributing it, but most of the time it's open source software. Anyone can get it. You ain't stopping it. Right?
So by making it easier to access and more affordable, you reduce the chance of that happening.
If you look at the Premier League and say, do you think there's an audience out there? We talk about the world football having a 5 billion audience space. We talk about the Premier League having massive numbers. I don't think it's beyond the wit of man to believe that you could have 100 million subscribers. I mean, what has Netflix got? 250 million subscribers? I don't think it's beyond the wit of man to think you could have 100 million subscribers to the Premier League product being distributed through something like a DAZN version of broadcasting, so streaming. So with that in mind, if you look at that and say you make it a price point of 10 quid, right?
A month.
Right? Which is a fraction of what people are being charged now.
120 quid a year.
So then you're talking about £1 billion a month. Then you're talking about £12 billion a year. Then that's before you get advertising roll in there. So now you're talking probably
You've got
about
production costs there, remember?
Well, that's what I was about to get to. You then talk about the fact that it probably could be 20 billion a year. So over a 4-year cycle, you've got an 80 billion revenue stream against a 12 billion revenue stream right now. But then you've got the costs.
You're quite happy to take in the production costs on that basis, and distribution.
And then you've got the cost implications of it in terms of indigenous talent being able to present and show shows around the world, because obviously you've got to be able to translate it. So you'd have pundits and observers around the world in studios representing the Premier League production local to the public. But notwithstanding it, I don't think it's beyond the wit of man to do it, and I think certainly economically it's viable. The legacy stuff, the challenge you've got is all the history stuff belongs to Sky. So how do you port that across with you? Because ultimately, Sky have the broadcast and the historical library.
No, usually when the Premier League rights change, or even the FA Cup rights change, the previous library comes with them.
Really?
The access to the archive material comes with them.
Not
necessarily the stuff around. Not the stuff around.
If that were the case, right?
No, not the stuff that's around it, but the actual game footage.
Okay, I'd be surprised if that were the case, but if it is, then that makes it even easier, because you can port that across as well. Whether there's an economic return to the original broadcast deal that you've got may well be part of the carry. But then you look at the run rate and say, okay, what is the risk in this? The risk in this is you've got to build a run rate up. You've got to have subscribers instantaneously to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Well, you'd find you present this as a joint venture to one of the major merchant banks or one of the major investment banks, whether it be Merrill Lynch or whatever.
You're going to be fine.
They'll bite their arm off at the shoulder.
Would you do a hybrid deal, a little bit like the MLS have done, where they've got the Apple deal, which is done, dusted? It's 10 years. You pay 70.
Small bid, isn't it?
It is, but it came across to me as a tester. It came across to me as that they were looking to see if it was possible and plausible, and it's proved to be so. So here's a question for you.
Well, they've indexed it to Messi as well, haven't they?
One of the things,
Messi's salary is being paid by as well.
One of the things that they've also done, though, is local carve-outs. So would you do then a deal where you get in certain markets the possibility for a match of the day or whatever to still be part of the portfolio, or would you completely remove yourself and just own your content?
Well, the match of the day side of things was very important at the beginning, because when the deal was done with Sky,
my dad's not going to watch a streaming service. He's not going to download an app,
and that's fine.
But he still wants to watch Premier League
I understand
football.
that, right? But the fact of the matter is that you can still put an app on a platform, as DAZN have done. So you can still have it carried on a platform and pay carriage fees for it if you want to. But the point is that you look at it and say the terrestrial deals that were done in the past, 30 years ago, the reasons why an Australian came over here and created an opportunity for the Premier League to be so successful in Rupert Murdoch was one of the key component parts was they did a highlights deal with Match of the Day to carry the product, to be able to make sure that a paywall-based product was given the audience that it required by showing the highlights somewhere else. Because it needed an extra 500,000 subscribers from the 250,000 that Sky had when they launched and bought the Premier League rights at
and
far
it's
inflated.
Worked for everyone so far.
Well, it's worked brilliantly for everybody. Football has been transformed by it. I mean, ultimately in 1992, if you look at what was happening before that, you had empty stadiums, you had football in financial ruin, you had no games being broadcast during the mid-80s because TV didn't value the broadcast deals and didn't like football very much. You had
some owners banning cameras. Ken Bates at Chelsea wouldn't let us see the goals.
You had politicians calling football fans scum. You had terrible tragedies inside football stadiums. English clubs being banned from Europe. You had a whole litany of challenges, and out of that phoenix came this remarkable Premier League. Now that journey has been gotten through. We still have similar challenges because 30 years ago the debt in football was 60 million quid. Now it's 6 billion. So the scale of debt has changed, and the challenges that football still has are significant. But this probably, to go to your original question, is a building block for actually doing what we're alluding to. I've been speaking about it for 5 or 6 years, about the idea there is nothing to stop them. Nothing to stop them. The only thing the only thing to be frightened of is fear itself. And this proof of concept is already there. We know the market is there. We know it can be delivered. We know it's not unreasonable to expect them to get to 100 million subscribers relatively quickly. How long it takes is the funding exercise, because none of the football clubs in the room want anything. Years ago, Sugar said something very intuitive, and Ken Bates disagreed with it, which was basically about the distribution of money. We should put X amount of Premier League money into infrastructure so we can build things that are more meaningful than just buying players and giving them bigger salaries. And the other amount of money goes into the development of the playing side of things, buying of players, but we control the inflation. They didn't want it. Ken Bates wanted all the money now, and people like that, because that's how they worked. And the reality of it is looking at how the structure of football works and what should be done next. And of course, to me, the idea of the concern is, well, how do we guarantee this? Because we know we're getting 3.5 billion, 4 billion a season as we stand, and that's the only issue in the room. But with American ownership models now in place, and Gulf state ownership models, and the necessity to keep on evolving football, this is a logical conclusion. And the first step would be the overseas deals, because all you're really using IMG for is a fulfillment house. You can deliver your own product content, you can buy your own camera setups, you can broadcast the same way as they can, just take their margin out of it.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.